So a little while ago, you probably saw the video I did where I got some art done of what a Paradox, Entei, and Raikou would look like to go alongside Suicune. They weren't the only Johto legends, though, that I got Paradox Pokemon for. I also did one for Ho-Oh and Lugia with the incredible artist Alex Allen. Links in the description, check them out, they are amazing. They did like my whole Pokemon Tempest series. The reason for me getting commissions for artwork for Lugia and Ho-Oh, which I will show you pretty soon, the reason I commissioned them is because I have a belief, and I've had this belief pretty much since Legends Arceus came out, which is that we will absolutely, in my opinion, get a Pokemon Legends Johto game before this generation is done. You might think I'm absolutely off my rocker. I've heard people talk about Let's Go Johto. I think you're off your rocker. So I do want to know what you think in the comments down below, but I want to run you through my ideas, what that story could look like, what the beats would be, why I think it makes so much sense, and then yeah, show off some cool artwork of Ho-Oh and Lugia. So the first question is why? Why do I think there's going to even be another Legends Johto game? And that is actually based on the sales data of the game. At first, it might not look like it sold particularly well relative to other Pokemon games, until you realize that Legends Arceus is a single copy game. Diamond and Pearl, many people buy both Diamond and Pearl. In fact, a lot of buyers buy both versions. That's why they sell them in two versions. So for a single copy game, it sold incredibly well. Okay, sure, but so did a bunch of other Pokemon games, Toby. Why a Legends game? Well, two, the Legends game was pretty much unanimously loved. Most people really loved Legends Arceus and felt like it was a good direction for Pokemon to go. Pokemon could do with a little bit of good reputation right now, given that between Pokemon Home's slow coming out and the release of Pokemon Scarlet just being like, ugh, what is this game? The fact that everything's just been quiet for a little while because obviously the DLC isn't coming till the end of the year. Dexit a few years earlier. Pokemon needs to do some things to bolster its reputation, especially next to its neighbor Zelda, who is looking so good that I made a whole second channel for Legend of Zelda, which is doing really well. Please, if you like Zelda, go subscribe to it. I'm having so much fun with it. Okay, but Toby, I still feel like this is all pretty circumstantial. Sure. Okay, well, how about this? The next game coming out, the next main series Pokemon game, will be Generation 10. And based on how it lines up with the timings of previous generations being about 3 years each, that would put it in 2025. However, if they push it by just a couple of months from November into either January, as they did with Legends Arceus, or delaying it a whole year into the holiday period of the following year, 2026, well, that means that Generation 10 hits the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. That is a marketing opportunity for Pokemon, a chance to really promote a new game on potentially a new system after the Switch. Let's be real, they're probably already working on Generation 10, so they need something to kind of fill the time in between. They can't go like another 3 years with releasing nothing. They need to release new games with new Pokemon, specifically because new Pokemon sell new Pokemon plushes and Pokemon cards and Pokemon episodes. And a good way to do that has historically been those regional variants and regional evolutions. So revisiting an old region like Johto, for example, a region that not only has that Gen 1-2 nostalgia of the Pokemania of the 90s and early 2000s, but also is the game that has not been visited in the longest. We've been to Kanto most recently in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, and Hoenn all the way back with the Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. But Heart Gold and Soul Silver was the last time we went to Johto, so it kind of lines up there. But then finally, and I guess my final point to all of this is aesthetically, the Johto region is an awful lot like the Sinnoh region, which makes sense. They're the two closest regions. There's even like this little space between them called the Sinjo Ruins, which is an event area that was referenced in Pokemon Legends Arceus in one of the ancient verses that you can find in the ground. And yeah, it makes sense. They're both based on Japanese areas of Japan, and it's even sort of being hinted at in the DLC. And I know you're thinking, Toby, that's ridiculous. The DLC is not hinting towards the next Pokemon game, except it did with the Isle of Armor, with the honey trees and the bear that had strong style and agile style, which we saw in Pokemon Legends Arceus. And then the Crown Tundra, I've done a whole video on how the whole of the Crown Tundra is like a big old like nod and reference to the stuff coming in Scarlet and Violet. You know, the crowned legendary Pokemon. Terra Crowns, legendary Pokemon that are ridden on a big open world, Regidrago and Lecky being sort of like analogous, is that the right word? I don't know, for Koraidon and Miraidon and the past and the future. It all kind of ties in. They love doing this kind of thing, Game Freak. It's what they're known for doing. It's actually really funny. It's what they're known for doing, and it is the thing that Pokemon speculators on the internet are most criticized for calling out, even though they're known for doing it. They do it every game. Anyway, that's a whole other ramble. And when you look to the Kitsukami DLC, it is very Japanese inspired. So the idea of going to a Japanese region for the next game, yeah, lines up pretty well. But that aesthetics thing is actually a really big deal, because in terms of developing a new Pokemon game, while they're working on Generation 10, they want to put as many resources and as much time into that as possible. So a really good way to do that is to copy and paste Legends Arceus, a game that definitely already works and that people unanimously liked and that sold really well, and reuse many of those assets in creating the world of an ancient Johto that has many of the same environments. Obviously, they'd still need to create new environments. They want to be creating new areas, but with the world of Legends operating as like a hub world with Jubilife Village and then 5 or 6 areas that you could travel to, this would be the same. You're only looking at really creating sort of 5 to 10 areas and then combining them through plot details. Plus, when you think of the branding of Legends, the first game that jumps to mind is the Johto region. It's the region of like ancient legend and myth, Ecruteak City being specifically the hub of that, so I see Ecruteak City as definitely this game's equivalent of Jubilife Village. Imagine being in an Ecruteak City where both of the towers still stand. The sense of impending doom and looming disasters that's coming. Also, you can still use time-space distortions because Johto has a mythical Pokemon focused on time travel. That, of course, being Celebi. And I know there are naysayers out there. There are people who say, but Toby, come on, Black and White is next to get a remake. Gen 5 is getting a remake next. And while I do think, you know, Gen 5 will be on the remake kind of docket after that, they're not going to release nothing for the next couple of years, and it's way too soon to get a Gen 5 re-release. My suspicion is that revisiting Gen 5 will be part of the Generation 10 30th anniversary celebrations because it's the halfway point, and it's a great way to show off where Pokemon was at before it transitioned into 3D to where it is now in the future with the 10th generation in the 30th anniversary. So Johto is a great like pit stop on the way there. In addition to all of this, Lugia and Ho-Oh have earned new forms. Mewtwo has Mega Evolution, Groudon and Kyogre have Primal Reversion, Origin forms for Dialga and Palkia, the box art legendaries Reshiram and Zekrom, they both have Kyurem fusions. Solgaleo and Lunala also have Necrozma fusions. When it comes to Xerneas and Yveltal, they have a sort of inactive modes in the forms of the inactive mode Xerneas, the tree, and then the egg of destruction, the cocoon of destruction, that's it, it's a cocoon. And then, of course, finally, there's Sword and Shield, where Zacian and Zamazenta have forms that are sort of powered up and then powered down. Oh, then I suppose, of course, we also have Scarlet and Violet, where they've come with a whole bunch of forms depending on what way you're traversing with these Pokemon, plus they've got their in-battle mode. So Lugia and Ho-Oh are genuinely owed new forms. Okay, I don't need to explain anymore. I think this kind of sells itself. If you're not with me at this point, maybe you won't like my Zelda channel, because it is called Absurd Zelda Theories, and it's all very absurd. So, absurd Pokemon theories. Here we go. What would a Legends Johto game look like? Well, as I mentioned before, I think Ecruteak City would be the hub village. Ecruteak Village would be the home of where you are in Johto. I have heard, by the way, and I can't remember who said it. Someone said it on Twitter. I thought it was a brilliant idea. The idea of it being a prequel to Legends Arceus, so Commander Kamado and other like relevant characters can still pop up. I'm not going to work with that because 1, it wasn't my idea, and 2, yes, they'll be copying and pasting assets and characters, but let's try and kind of stay focused on the unique story of this game. We will see a couple of the characters of the Johto region in the ancient past. I think no-brainers are the champion Lance, much like how the champion Cynthia was, of course, we saw her ancestors in Legends Arceus. So I think Lance and Claire of the Dragon's Den, I think the Dragon's Den and the dragon tamers of the Johto region will be a big element of this. I think also we could probably see like an ancestor to Morty. He's a character who's pretty tied to the kind of ancestry of the region, and I think he'll be really interesting. But then there's also characters like Norman and Valerie, who are characters who previously, they are said in their description to have come from Johto. So I think it'd be really cool to see their ancestors in Johto. I also think it would be really cool to see an ancestral version or a time-displaced version of Emmett to go alongside Ingo, who appeared in Legends Arceus. Maybe they could even reunite in this game. That would be super cool. Having followed Ingo through the time-space distortion, Emmett ends up here in the old Johto region. Speaking of the old Johto region, of course, cities like Goldenrod are not fully built yet. Olivine Port is just going to be, yeah, like a beach area. There's no city there yet. But then older towns like Violet City and Azalea Town and even the Lake of Rage, these areas are prominent features of the Johto region. They'll still be there. The Johto region may even have a different name. It might even be called Sinjo. We don't know yet. Okay, I've got 5 or 6 areas here that I've got written down. So we've got to create some areas. So obviously you've got Ecruteak City as like the hub area, the central point of the region from which a trainer can travel out from. I think what is Azalea Town, the Dark Cave, and Violet City would be like an area where there would be a little town of people. You'd see the Slowpoke well, as it was in in the early day. Kurt's ancestor, the creator of Pokeballs, and where this whole idea of apricorns being turned into Pokeballs came from. I really stumbled on that one. And of course, the creation of the Sprout Tower, or perhaps what the Sprout Tower was before it was a Bellsprout place. Maybe it was an early roosting spot for an ancient Lugia or Ho-Oh. I do think a beach-like area where Olivine City will one day be, maybe an old lighthouse is there, and the Whirl Islands, and perhaps even a little island off in the distance that will one day become Cianwood, where people practice ancient Johto medicines. That would be very cool, but definitely having the Whirl Islands in the past would be awesome. Perhaps an area in the center-ish of the region that will one day become kind of National Park and Goldenrod City, that at the moment is just kind of general wilds, but in the middle of it all, the ruins of Alph. We could learn so much more about the ruins of Alph and the unknown. Oh, and of course, the Ilex Forest on the very edge where there's a shrine to Celebi. And then in the top eastern corner of the region, you've got like the Lake of Rage and the Icy Path and Blackthorn City. Perhaps there's even an extra area that leads us to the top of Mount Silver, and at the bottom is some kind of retreat that will later become New Bark Town. I think having Mount Silver is going to be pretty crucial to this. It's going to be this game's equivalent of the mountain, what's it called? Why can't I remember the godly mountain of Legends Arceus? Mount Cornet. Heck, if they wanted to help cover the time before the 30th anniversary comes out, just create 3 or 4 new areas, and you can unlock the ancient Kanto region as DLC the following year, if you want. I think definitely as well we should see the ancestors to Professor Elm and Silver. I think having an ancestor to your rival Silver would be very, very cool. As for the way the story would be here, there's a lot of ways you could go. Obviously, Team Galactic in Legends Arceus became the Galaxy Squad. Maybe something is similar is happening here. Maybe in Equitique City you take part of the Rocket Survey Corps. The name will one day be reused to create Team Rocket. Or maybe not. Maybe it'd be more likely that you're working alongside the Kimono Sisters, and then out there in the world are the Dragon Clan Masters, who have some kind of difference with them. This causing conflict between the two groups of lawkeepers in this ancient Johto region. One of you lovely people, the incredible Tommy Monkhouse, suggested the idea that a lot of the Hisuian forms that we see in ancient Hisui are actually like game exclusive Pokemon. So for example, or evolutions of game exclusive Pokemon. So like Braviary was a version exclusive to Black, I believe, or maybe it was White. It was one of them. So was Lilligant, so was Scyther, which of course evolves into Cleavor, so was Ursaring, which is related to Donphan now. We've seen 2 new Donphan forms in the Paradox Donphans that appear in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but for those other ones, we could totally see like an ancient evolution to Pinsir, or a different version of Mandibuzz, or Whimsicott. Great notice, Tommy. I really like this idea. We could see the early GS Ball, and for sure, I think it would be super cool if we saw the origins of the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. Now, we've recently had the Paradox Walking Wake. I do think we're going to get like an Entei and a Raikou to go along with that, and you can see my video on that. But at the same time, maybe we won't. Maybe these Paradox Pokemon will be appearing as a result of the time-space distortions and cause something to mess up in the story. Maybe even cause the destruction of the towers, which then means these Pokemon are reincarnated into the Raikou, Entei, and Suicune that we know today, or perhaps not. Maybe they'll be completely disconnected. It's possible also that we might see the destruction of the Beta Town that is now the Lake of Rage by Gyarados. We'll definitely see, of course, a red Gyarados. I think it'd be really cool to see some kind of Hisuian, Johtoian ancient Gyarados. And again, these Pokemon, by the way, the Hisuian forms and these ancient Johto forms, I think will all sort of be amalgamated into one. So I think we'll see many of those Hisuian Pokemon like Weirdeer, again, here in this game. Also, much how Pokemon Legends Arceus gave new lore to the forces of nature from Unova, there's no reason this game couldn't do the same with another legendary trio. Perhaps it's going to do something with Swords of Justice, explaining why Iron Leaves is a thing at the moment, or maybe not. I can actually see the Johto region getting on really well with doing something with the Latias, Latios and Latias, maybe a third Lati, or maybe new ancient Hisuian versions. Also, and I've already done a whole video on this is a perfect opportunity to explore starter Pokemon, having more sort of Johto, Unova, and Alolan starters getting new forms. Given what I've said already about the relationship to a potential Dragon Clan, I think it would be really cool to see a Dragon Water type Feraligatr, a Dragon Fire type Incineroar, and a Dragon Grass type Superior that are all regional variants tied into the ancient dragon lore of this region. And of course, that leaves us open to a future Legends game where we can get a new final starter of each of those trios for Johto, Unova, and Alola. And of course, ultimately, a way to catch Celebi at the end of the game. all of this stuff is like fan favorite stuff. I think none of this stuff is like non-controversially. I think all of this is stuff that people would enjoy. And it really is a case of copy and paste a lot of Legends Arceus into one game, create new areas, do, you know, the story beats and all that. Obviously, that's still work. It's never going to be a straight copy paste, but it is going to take less time than building up a Johto game in the form of like a Let's Go Johto. I believe that you would be able to do more copy paste work than you would from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee to a Let's Go Johto game, which, by the way, Let's Go was made for the release of Pokemon Go to like galvanize that audience and bring them in. That there isn't that need anymore. It is a guaranteed hit that can release on the Nintendo Switch that people will enjoy, that will sell well, that will be good for the Pokemon reputation, while in the background, they're working hard on Generation 10 and the 30th anniversary. I haven't shown you my Ho-Oh and Lugia yet. You saw one of them in the thumbnail. I haven't decided at this point which one. We have Noble Sun, the Ho-Oh of the ancient past. This is the Ho-Oh that is being depicted on the walls of the ruins of Alph. They say that in ancient times, the sky was dark till this Pokemon breathed the ball of fire that became the sun. Yeah, I feel that. And you can see it kind of takes inspiration from the shiny variant of Ho-Oh, the gold version as well, that you see at the beginning of the anime. And I believe it is going to be Fire Psychic type. I think that's what we'll go for with this one. Or Fire Dragon, maybe. Then we have Iron Ocean, a water dragon Pokemon that is, it's got like little torpedo hands where Lugia normally has its fingers, and I like the idea that in the far future, this Pokemon is used in great wars to decide ocean battles. Whoever has this Pokemon on their side has conquest over the seas. Let me know. Hello, Pokemon Master! My name is Birdkeeper Toby, and thank you for clicking on my video. Right, I gotta set something straight here. I relaunched the channel last week, came back with 5 new bits of content. I hope you enjoyed all of them. Please go and spread some love to some of the ones that didn't do as well. Like, for example, the video with me and my girlfriend. I thought it was really cute. We had a lot of fun making it. I want to make more videos like that in the future, so I'm going to link that down below. And seriously, I absolutely love Pokemon cards. This week, I got hold of my first ever Shining Charizard PSA, and don't worry, this isn't going to be a Pokemon card video, but I look at this, and this makes me happy. Oh, and one little tiny quick thing before I get started. On the 8th and 9th of February, I am going to be down at Annie Manga Pop. It's a convention down in Plymouth. I did it last year. I had a lot of fun. I'm going to be there with my girlfriend, with Phoebe. We're going to be there. We're going to be selling the Evolutionary Tree poster, trading some Pokemon cards. If you're going, if you live in Plymouth or you live down south, that is the furthest south I ever end up going. Please do come along to the convention. It's a lot of fun. It's really chilled out, and we should totally trade Pokemon cards. Bring your Pokemon cards. Last week, I made a video talking about the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC that's coming out, the Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra. I talked about how I think the stuff in this trailer, including the presence of Regis but not Regigigas, alludes to the idea that there are going to be Sinnoh remakes coming out next year, which I'm feeling pretty confident about. It's one of my Toby predictions. Which, by the way, Toby predictions so far, Pokemon Z didn't end up happening. But I also predicted back in 2015 that we would get a Kanto revisit, and the next year we got the Pokemon Yellow Virtual Console. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, the predictions on this channel have been very hit and miss, so do take it with a little pinch of salt. But I gotta tell you, I got a prediction. This is called Regidark and this is called Regilight, and in the comment section you all went nuts at me. Toby, this is Regielectric, and this is Regidragon. It's Regidragon, or Drake, or Dragoon, or Draconis, or Wyvern. It's a dragon type Regi. Clearly, Toby, look at the dragon skull. And you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry. You're wrong. You're so wrong. That bit there, that's the future gif for when it turns out that I'm wrong, that you can tweet at me to say we told you so. But for now, I'm still sure that it's Regidark and Regilight, and here's why. Okay, Regidark, Regilight, let's talk about it. Let's start with the yellow one. I think this is the most simple one, right? I think we can all agree that this is an electric type Pokemon, whether it's called Regivolt, Regizap, Regishock, whatever we want to call it. Regilight, in my case, we can agree it's an electric type Pokemon. There's no other type that would possibly even remotely fit this. And this is a DLC, not a new generation, so we're not expecting new types to appear. This is an electric type Pokemon. Okay, 100% cool, agreed. Now, does the name have to match the type? Well, let's have a look at the other Regis. For example, we've got Regirock, it's a rock type, check. Regice, that's an ice type, check. Registeel, It's a steel type, check. Regigigas is not a Gigas type, there is no Gigas type. But then again, Regigigas is a special, well, it's a special case. So maybe that isn't something we can use as evidence for its name not being Regielectric. Regielectric? I think Regielectric does actually sound pretty cool. But I think Regielite more in relation to what's going on with the other one. This one here. First of all, let's look at what possible types there are here. It's not rock, it's not ice, it's not steel, it's not normal. Those have been accounted for, and let's face it, it's not electric because the other one's electric. There's 5 types gone. When we look at the other elemental types, grass, water, fire, I don't really see how it could be any of those. Fire at a push. Regifire. Yeah, Regifire, actually that's pretty cool. But it doesn't really have those fire elements that you would expect from a fire golem. Remember, that's what these are kind of based off of. They are golems, and a fire golem you would imagine would be, well, made of fire. There's nothing really suggesting ground, fighting, flying, poison, fairy, psychic, ghost. Ghost, maybe. It's got a dead thing on it. It's got a skull. And you know, I think that's all the types other than dragon and dark. And these are both possibilities as far as I'm concerned. Now, let's look at that evidence. Why do we think it's Regi Dragon? Why do so many people leaving this barrage of comments, it's a dragon type Regi? Well, it's a dragon skull. If you flip it on its side, you can see it's got the top of the dragon skull on one arm and it's got the base of the dragon skull, the bottom jaw, on the other. As for the 2 little feet of this Regi, I don't know what they're supposed to be in relation to the skull, but never mind, it doesn't matter. The point is, this skull, I mean, look at it. It looks just like a Charizard. A Pokemon that notably isn't a dragon, you know, when Goomy and Applin are, but that's besides the point. Andalone and Executor, and 10% Zygarde, and Perfect Zygarde. Wow, the dragons are not very draconic in these games. So, you know, it's got a dragon skull, but then what about dark type? Why did I initially think dark type? And to me, the moment I looked at this Pokemon, the first thing I saw was Yveltal. Look at them, they are the exact same color scheme. I mean, the red and the black and the way it blends together, I don't think there's any other Pokemon that is like this shade of red. And you're thinking, really, Toby, we're going off a shade of red? Well, not that alone. Again, take a closer look. Take a look at the shapes on this Regi's eyes and the shapes on the other Regi. There is an X and a Y. Pokemon X and Y. Xerneas and Yveltal. Just another hint to its relationship with Yveltal. So now we have 2 points here. A Y and a color scheme. And again, they're weak, they're loose, but are they any more loose than a dragon skull? I mean, like I say, that looks like a Charizard skull to me, or an Aerodactyl, and neither of those Pokemon are dragon type, unless you're counting Mega Charizard. Maybe you do think that bit of evidence is stronger, and that's fair enough, but then the next point of evidence I'll give you, I still got like 2 more bits of evidence for you. Number 1 is, surely the fact that it has a skull, you know, the important part isn't that it has a dragon skull, the important part is that it has a dragon skull. It's a skull. A sign of death and darkness, so maybe that would relate it more to the ghost type, but also the fact it's a dragon skull, and dragons, by the way, UK mythology here, a little bit of that, seeing as we are in Gala, a region based off of England, based off of the entire UK a little bit. Dragons in the mythology of England are never usually the good guys. I mean, look at St. George, you look at King Arthur, dragons pretty always are a sign of evil, a bad omen. And dark is the evil type. Okay, maybe that doesn't all convince you, well I got one more thing, and I think when combined with these, dark is the clear winner. The baby Regis, Regice, Regirock, and Registeel, they are all kind of named off of periods in time. The Ice Age for Regice, Registeel represents the Iron or Bronze Age, and then Regirock represents the Stone Age. The Electric Age is not a thing. The Dragon Age, that's a video game, but it's not a real period of time. Now, you might say the medieval ages might, for example, be better represented by an Age of Dragons, right? Do you know what else suits medieval times? The Dark Ages. The Dark Ages. The Dark Ages, and then the Age of Enlightenment, which is a period of time in British history. It's a part of our history is the Age of Enlightenment, and this is when kind of science began to really take off. And in fact, the discovery of electricity happened during this period of time, the Age of Enlightenment. And let's be honest here, dragon and electric don't parallel each other at all, but light and dark certainly do, and we don't have a light type in the Pokemon games, so electric to represent that kind of works, and it works here with this Age of Enlightenment discovery of electricity thing, in contrast to the Dark Ages where they believed that dragons were real and we're slaying dragons that are evil. the dragon part of the skull isn't what's important, it's the skull part of the skull. And the dragon just sets the age that this Pokemon represents, the Dark Ages, along with, you know, Ice Age, Stone Age, Iron Age, and the Age of Enlightenment. And it's important these two Pokemon parallel each other, because while, yeah, there's plenty of duos out there that don't parallel each other, like Regice, Regirock, Registeel, they don't particularly complement each other in any particular way, but with these two, they absolutely must. It is necessary that they parallel each other, because when you look at what we've seen, so little of the DLC so far, and you look at how the temple to these Regis is divided in the middle so cleanly, it's clear to me that these two Regis are related to each other in some way. I actually wouldn't be surprised if there's another Regi that is hidden that comes together when you combine these two Pokemon that will appear. But that's just my speculation. As for Regidragon, I just don't think it fits. I think it has one bit of evidence, and I think that bit of evidence is the Dragon Skull, Charizard Skull. Charizard's not even a dragon. It's just kind of weak in general, versus a whole ton of information that to me says, yeah, that's Regidark, and then that must be Regilight paralleling it. But hey, that's just a prediction, and I can't wait to see all those GIFs saying, and I'll be seeing that all over my Twitter. Hey Pokemon Masters, Birdkeeper Toby here. Pokemon Sun and Moon were announced not that long ago, and ever since the names were released with the small trailer, there has been plenty of speculation, including where the games will be set or what things in the Pokemon universe relate to the Sun and Moon. But one thing that's got nearly no attention at all is the sundial in Anastar City. So today I have a theory about that, which is hopefully gonna blow your minds. Mostly because no one else seems to have realized it yet, but the Anastar City sundial is possibly the most important thing that's going to relate to Pokemon Sun and Moon from the previous games. Now, when it comes to this sundial, people aren't quite sure how it got there. People in Anastar City theorize that it may have come from space, while the map description suggests it may have been the workings of a mythical Pokemon. And if it is, it's very likely either Diancie because of the gems or Hooper because of the gold plates. I'm gonna get back to that. But to continue on with this theory, I actually want to look at the TV show, and namely the poster for the X, Y, and Z series, which is currently airing. Now, because of the way that marketing goes, when something is going on in the show, it's normally reflected in the games and vice versa. For example, back when the Advanced series was nearly over, they continued it on with the Battle Frontier series because the Battle Frontier became a feature in Emerald. Meanwhile, when Heart Gold and Soul Silver came out, there were a few episodes dedicated to the characters from those games, and X, Y, and Z is no exception. Just look at all the unresolved plots. What is Team Flare up to? What is the deal with this perfect Zygarde? Look at Ash Greninja and Anastar City's sundial? In fact, that's Anastar City at the bottom of the poster, which is odd because Ash and the gang left Anastar City at the end of the last series. And they definitely didn't need to include Anastar City or the sundial in the poster, which shows to me that they're not done with this town yet. And if they're not done with it in the show, then chances are they're not done with it in the games, and that's what we're going to be focusing on. And of course, that's no surprise given the titles of the new games. Now, in my 2 Sun and Moon videos so far, I've already spoken about Kalos being a post-game area and AZ being based off of Louis XIV, who was known as the Sun King. And given the presence of Team Flare, it seems very likely that Kalos kind of is the Sun region. That's not to say that Kalos is the region you'll be playing in Pokemon Sun version, but just that given that there's a sundial there, and we know that moondials exist thanks to another NPC in Anastar City, that Kalos kind of represents the Sun region. And going forward with a lot of my theories, this is how I'm going to be treating the new regions, which are likely based off of Hawaii, by the way, as we well know. They're sort of sister regions. They are different, but they're related. And with that in mind, this moondial that the NPC in Anastar City speaks about is likely in this sister region to Kalos. There's a sundial in Kalos and a moondial in the Moon region, which will be where we play Pokemon Sun and Moon version. And while there aren't any famous moondials in Hawaii, there is a clock tower, and those of you who don't know, the sundial in Anastar City is also based off of a famous clock tower, so seems pretty likely. Also in Anastar City, the gym is based off an observatory. This is also more seen in the show. But if there's going to be any town relating to the Sun and Moon versions, this is the town. And when I look up observatories in Hawaii, the first one that comes up on Google Maps is a Canadian
Hawaiian French Observatory. It links the two. Is there really any doubt at this point that the new regions will be based off Hawaii? So now onto the biggest part of this Pokemon theory, and take everything I've said so far and upcoming with a pinch of salt. We don't have a lot of information yet. And if you're seeing this when Pokemon Sun and Moon is out, then let me know how I did in retrospect in the comments. But there is a mystery surrounding the sundial, and that's what I wanted to explore. The mystery is the hidden treasure at the tip of the shadow, which an NPC talks about in the game. Now, while some people speculate this to be the sunstone that's next to the sundial, I don't think so, because it's not really at the tip of where the shadow should be. In fact, there's not even really a shadow. So then I thought, what if the shadow goes the other way out into the ocean? And I pondered on it for a bit, and that's when I realized, the ocean? If you look at the Kalos maps, there is no ocean there. The ocean shouldn't even be near Anastar City. When you look at the more artistic drawing of the map, you do see that there's a river connecting them, and it bulks out quite a bit, but certainly you shouldn't be able to see out into the ocean. What you should see when you look out is the icy wall of the route before it, certainly not the ocean and these rocks. And you might think, hey, that's just a programmer's mistake, but no, these programmers are deliberate. Let's take a look at Azure Bay, for example, where every single rock, every single island is accounted for in this map. And even in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, when you go soaring, every rock and island is accounted for in the game, and everything beyond the boundaries of the map is just blue ocean. There's nothing out there that's decorative. So what are these rocks and why are they there? Why were they deliberately put there? And this of course is where we come back to Diancie and Hooper and the idea that the sundial is the creation of Diancie and Hooper. Let's assume that there's a moon dial out there that's the exact same, a sister, and they're both made by the power of Hooper. Well, we know that Hooper can create wormholes, windows in time and space. In the show we see Hooper moving legendary Pokemon, and in the games it happens. In its Pokedex entry we hear about it moving a palace, and the theory is, the speculation is, that it happened. And if you have the event Hooper and take it to Parfume Palace, there's a guy there who will tell you that Hooper once moved islands. And did it happen in the game? Well, if we're assuming that the sundial is somehow related to Hooper, then yes, absolutely. The Anastar City sundial is actually one side of a gateway, one side of a window in space, and the other side, that of course is connected to the moon dial. And the moon dial, if of course based off the Hawaiian clock tower, much like the sundial is based off of the French clock tower, would be on the new regions. So Toby, what are you saying? There's a region within a region? Well, no, of course, look at the maps, there's no region there. But as we say, Hooper creates wormholes. If its power is within the sundial, then that is what you're seeing. It's a window through time and space, and what you're seeing is these islands, this region. And by the way, how many islands are there? 8. How many Hawaiian islands are there? 8. And this is the theory. This is how the new region and this is how Kalos are going to be connected. Through these two sundials. Well, the actual physical region might be on the other side of the Pokemon globe. The two regions are connected through a portal in time and space. Of course, we will see how this theory adapts when new information is given over time. Is this even possible? Let me know in the comments, but one thing is for sure. Anastar City has a bigger role to play yet. And the Masters, Toby here, and welcome back to Sinnoh Week, a week filled with videos all about the Sinnoh region. We have done, I'll tell you what, over the history of this channel, we've done 2 Alola weeks, we've done a Johto week, we've done a Kanto week, we've done a Galar week, and now we're doing a Sinnoh week. We're getting through these regions. I'll tell you what, by the time all the remakes are done, I'm gonna have all of the weeks. I don't know where I was going with that, much like I don't know where I'm going with today's Pokemon theories, because much like a little bit earlier this year, I did 3 Sinnoh theories that don't make a lot of sense. I'm doing 3 more they're theories that have evidence, and you can look at them and go, oh yeah, but also they don't make a whole lot of sense. That said, what does make sense is leaving a comment on this video, because Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl are in the title of this video, meaning if you leave a comment, you're in with a chance of winning a copy of Legends Arceus when it comes out, because I'm going to do a giveaway for 3 copies. Really stumbled on my words there. I'm going to do a giveaway for 3 copies of Legends Arceus. It's a worldwide giveaway. And don't forget to buy a pack of Pokemon cards for the like button, open up the pack, and when they pull a holo, say, no, 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 that pack was for me. Right, let's get into it. 3 Pokemon Sinnoh theories that are kind of terrible and don't make a lot of sense. Let's start with one that I actually take it as truth, as like Pokemon lore, but I know that there's not a good reason for it. So there's this big debate. Who came first? Was it Bulbasaur or Rhydon? No,
No. Was it Mew or was it Arceus? Okay, in terms of the Pokemon lore, that's something to talk about. Mew is said to be the ancestor of all Pokemon life forms containing all Pokemon DNA, but Arceus is said to be the god of all Pokemon, so which is true? Either? Or what's going on? Well, I've always adopted the theory that there are a couple of Pokemon that Mew, despite what the Pokedex says, just doesn't contain the DNA of, or at the very least is not above or earlier than, and that is that Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf at minimum are the godly Pokemon that sort of go before Mew. That's even how I have it on my Tree of Evolution poster, with Mew being the beginning of biological life, and it's not responsible for the evolution of Ultra Beasts because they're from other dimensions, and it's maybe not responsible for Pokemon like Regigigas or Groudon or Kyogre, we don't really know. But other than that, everything else is the descendant of Mew, and Mew is the descendant of Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie, 3 psychic-like floaty Pokemon with long tails that it looks kind of similar to, and it's the only reason I can imagine that in the Sinnoh games they would have designed Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit in that way, with the leader of that trio having a focus on the pink coloration that Mew has. It is the only reason that I can possibly think that they would use those kinds of design features for these Pokemon is because they wanted to connect it to Mew so that there was a clear narrative of the godly Pokemon and then the biological Pokemon. But realistically, there isn't actually any evidence for this. Other than the fact that they are psychic type, look similar, and have some ties to the origin of the Pokemon world, I accept it as Pokemon fact, but there isn't any evidence for it. It's actually quite a weak theory. Still, it's quite a serious theory, so why don't we look at something a little bit more lighthearted for number 2? With number 2 being that the region that Meltan is from is the Sinnoh region, for 1 bit of evidence and 1 bit of evidence only. No, 2 bits of I'll give you 2 bits of evidence for it. I've just come up with one while thinking about it right now. First of all, Melmetal and Gigantamax Melmetal are giants, and they are thought of as giant Pokemon, and the Arceus plates are said to have been made from the powers of slain giants. Ooh. Yeah, that's a real serious bit of Gen 4 crossover, but the other hint is that Meltan, the imagery of Meltan, a little silver body with 2 little nub hands and then a big round face with a big eye in the middle, can be seen, I'm laughing as I say it makes no sense, in the beacon badge. It's the beacon badge, the final gym badge of the Sinnoh region. And you know, Melmetal knows electric moves, and it's the electric gym, and the electric gym is filled with metal cogs and gears that maybe Meltan is made of the metal of the... Where was I going with this? Okay, do you know what? Look, that one was really short. I'm gonna throw in a bonus one for you. One that I actually don't know if this is the case, and it's not really Sinnoh, but it is Generation 4, so forgive me. Let's take a look at Pokemon Battle Revolution, a game set on an island called Poketopia. My theory, don't know how true this is this fact? Is that it is the same island as Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2, with Pokemon Stadium having a building that has a bunch of Magnemite around it, Pokemon Stadium 2 having a building that has a Magneton on it, and then this having a Magnezone building with this one island building up in development over time. And the tie obviously between these 3 games is that they are all big TV stadium games, you know, before Pokemon was on the TV. A mini theory to do with Gen 4, not really Sinnoh. Look, it's a bonus one. I really felt bad about the Meltan one. Okay, let's try for one with a little bit more evidence. Number 3/4, the final theory that makes no sense. And by the way, if you've watched this far and you're still here, thank you, secret audience. Thank you for being interested in the art, the craftsmanship that goes behind Pokemon theories. I tell you, a lot of this stuff just ends up on the cutting room floor for years. And then suddenly a bit of evidence comes along and you go, oh my goodness. And you know, I'm kind of hoping that might even be the case with this last one, that Team Galactic and Team Rocket are somehow connected or related. Have you ever wondered how, like, what's Team Rocket got to do with rockets and space? Very little, I'll tell you that, but there are some connections. For example, all of the scientists of Team Galactic all use Kadabra, which means that they might be ex-Silphco employees. That also because Team Galactic has ties to Porygon Z, an alternate dimension version of Porygon, and Porygon was developed at Silphco, and Silphco has its ties to Team Rocket, with, I think there's even a Team Rocket grunt in Generation 2 who's like, I used to be a Silphco employee. Scientist Ross, the classic one if you've watched any of Lockstin's videos. Both organizations feature prolific use of the Murkrow, Houndour, and Zubat line. Mars of Team Galactic looks a lot like Heart Gold and Soul Silver's Ariana, and they were developed in the exact same generation, so like, why were they developed to look so similar? Could there be a relationship there? Cyrus's team doesn't look too dissimilar from what you'd expect from like a Team Rocket admin. In the manga, Team Rocket goes after both Deoxys and Arceus, and the Deoxys part is relevant because the Deoxys meteorites can be found in Veilstone, where Team Galactic has its own base. And finally, there is a high-ranking member of Team Rocket called Cirid, but Cirid is actually a double agent working for Team Galactic. So I was wondering if there's a possibility that Team Galactic emerged from Team Rocket, or that Team Rocket emerged from Team Galactic, or that it's one arm of the other. But so far, despite all of these little connections and bits of evidence, I can't find the theory. Maybe you can down in the comments. And in my recent videos, I've been promising you new Pokemon theories, and I'm not one to back down from a challenge. But I didn't say they had to be good Pokemon theories. Hey Pokemon Masters, Toby here, and in this video I'm going to be dishing up 3 Pokemon theories that are kind of, I guess, on the cutting room floor, so to speak. Ideas that I've had, connections that I've made in my brain investigating the Pokemon world. Connections that I realize go absolutely nowhere, because like most Pokemon theories, the developers never thought of them. Video ideas that I've had either recently or for some time that I've thought about it and gone, hey, is there a Pokemon theory there? And then eventually landed on, nope, nope. You'll never be able to make this into a video. Until now. Because look, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Legends, Arceus, they're on the horizon. I need to start making Sinnoh content, right? So today, adventure awaits us. Hashtag ad, by the way. This video contains an ad for Zavi. More on them a little bit later on. And we are going to explore the Great Sinnoh region and 3 Pokemon theories from Sinnoh that make absolutely no sense. Let's take a look. Okay, Pokemon Masters, so I'm being a little bit hyperbolic. When I say Pokemon theories that make no sense, I don't mean that they make absolutely no sense, just there is not enough there for me to make a video claiming this to be a legitimate theory that should change your headcanon about the world of Pokemon. If you come away from this video believing these 3 theories that I'm going to tell you, then you have some seriously low standards for what counts as evidence. They're just ideas, topics that I've dabbled with over the years that I've always thought, wouldn't it be cool if I could make that connection work? I'll start off with, I guess, the most recent one. I guess what we'll do is we'll start with the most recent one and then work backwards in time to one that I came up with like 3 years ago. I'm going to start up with one that I came up with just the other week, and that's the idea that Candice from Sinnoh is dead. It's like a Birdkeeper Toby classic. Toby, not every character can be a secret ghost in the Pokemon world, okay? Otherwise there would be no living people. Ooh, maybe that's a theory. No, but seriously, the idea here is that the 7th gym leader of Sinnoh, Candice, is actually one of Pokemon's many ghost girls. Ghost girls appear all the time in the franchise. And especially, actually, we get a lot of ghosts in the Sinnoh region. Of course, there's the old chateau where you can find what appears to be the ghost of a little girl and an old man, perhaps the butler of the old chateau. When accessing the mythical Darkrai event in the Harbor Inn in Canalive City, there is a man who puts you into the bed where you end up in the dream world battling Darkrai, and when you awaken, that man's just gone. And even more concretely, on your way up to Snowpoint City, which is where Candice is, there is a house in the middle of a snowstorm, and inside there is a lady who will give you the spell tag. When you then exit and re-enter the house, she's gone, and when you look at the spell tag, you realize that it's an item designed to boost ghost type moves, so perhaps she was a ghost. So where does Candice fit into this picture? Well, while playing Pokemon Masters, I went into the section where you can learn about the day in the life of any of the characters, any of the Pokemon Masters. Candice, of course, has one with her sync pair partner, Abomasnow. She's talking about how she and Abomasnow became a team, and actually tells a story about how, once upon a time, she was lost in the snowy areas around Snowpoint and got caught up in a snowstorm, and she thought she wasn't going to make make it. But then Abomasnow appeared and saved her, and here she is, alive and well. And that kind of reminded me of something, the Pokédex entry belonging to the Pokemon Frostlass, which says, legends in snowy regions say that a woman lost on an icy mountain was reborn as this Pokemon. In fact, it's pretty likely that this is what happened with the lady who gave you the spell tag. Perhaps she's a Frostlass. That's a pretty well-known Pokemon theory. By the way, this is all speculation. I should be clear. I mean, obviously, these ones are so speculative, they don't make a lot of sense. The point is, what if Candice was just like this? What if she was lost on a snowy mountain and Abomasnow never saved her? After all, her ace Pokemon in Pokemon Platinum is not her Abomasnow. It's a Frostlass. Perhaps that's her entering the battle, and I know what you're thinking, Toby, this is a pretty weak Pokemon theory, and you're right, but there is one piece of evidence, which is she speaks a little bit in the third person, which, in the works of some of William Shakespeare's plays, sometimes when people are referring to themselves in the third person, it means that they're gonna die soon or that they're dead. Examples, that's it. It's such a weak Pokemon theory, but it's such a fun idea. So now you know how low the bar is set. I guess let's continue exploring some Pokemon theories, but first, so this one is all about Manaphy and how perhaps it relates to the Lake Guardians of the Sinnoh region. You know how in Sinnoh there are 3 lakes, Acuity, Valor, and Verity. And then technically there's the 4th lake, the Send-Off Spring, which is described as Sinnoh's 4th forgotten lake. That's where you get access to Giratina and the Distortion World. Well, I've been thinking about this a lot. What's Manaphy's role within all of this? You'd think if any Pokemon was a lake spirit, it would be Manaphy. After all, it's a water type Pokemon. And it's really interesting when you look at the design of Manaphy and you see the red gem within its chest, it looks a lot like the red gems in the heads of Mesprit, Azelf, and Uxie, the Lake Guardians. Well, okay, I thought when I was writing this script, but maybe I'm onto something here. After all, there is a 4th lake of Sinnoh, the Send-Off Spring, where you can find access to the Distortion World and Giratina. Could Manaphy be related to that spring in any way whatsoever? No, there's no evidence for that. Okay, what about like Fione or something? I mean, that's related to Manaphy. Could that be related to the Send-Off Spring? No, it's not. Manaphy isn't a lake guardian. It is known as the seafaring Pokemon. Perhaps Manaphy is like the lake spirit of Sinnoh, but for the entire ocean that surrounds the Sinnoh region. And like to that I say, cool idea, Toby. Go me. But other than the fact that it is a water sprite-like creature that has 2 antennae instead of the 2 tails of the Lake Guardians, the fact that they look vaguely similar and that they are legendary Pokemon, there's actually nothing to suggest that Manaphy has any relationship to the Lake Guardians, Dialga, Palkia, or Arceus. And I mean nothing. I watched the whole Pokemon Ranger and the Temple of the Sea movie I skimmed it completely, and there is nothing that I can find in there that even remotely links to Arceus. On top of that, Manaphy's a mythical Pokemon, so you can't just naturally obtain it in the game unless you connect up with Pokemon Ranger, and in Pokemon Ranger, it's not like it's Team Galactic who are going after the Manaphy egg. There is, as far as I can tell, absolutely nothing. The best I could find is that in the Team Galactic headquarters in Veilstone City, in the area that they're keeping Azelf, Uxie, and Mesprit during the game, there are these little tanks with water in, and inside the tanks there is something moving around. This is a place where Cyrus was trying to recreate the red chain. And because it seems that he's making the red chain from the gems that appear on Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit's head, perhaps he's making a fake red chain by using the gems that appear on Manaphy or Fione. Perhaps these tanks have those Pokemon in. The only other thing I could think is that Manaphy has the heart swap ability, which in the movie is shown as you jumping into the shoes and the point of view of somebody else. You're able to understand what's going on in their heart and going on in their life. And that kind of links in with the Lake Spirits in that the Lake Spirits each represent willpower for Azelf, knowledge for Uxie, and emotions for Mesprit. So maybe the heart swapping ability is ties into those 3, but there's just not enough lore there that I can find. I think in the manga, Charon goes after Manaphy, but again, it's just that's in the post game, and Charon wants to get every single legendary Pokemon, so it just doesn't quite come together. Another Pokemon theory that hits the cutting room floor. And finally, we have theory number 3. This is the oldest, and I have to apologize here because I genuinely can't remember if I had a discussion with this about someone, if somebody sent me a message with this theory. I don't think they did. I think I came up with it. I'm 99% sure. If you ever send me a Pokemon theory that I'm going to cover on the channel, I always want to credit you because that'll encourage more people to send me Pokemon theories that I can then talk about, and then they'll send me more, and then, hey, I don't have to keep thinking so hard. But I haven't quite got that far with this one yet, and this is a theory. It is about Sinnoh, but at its heart, it's about the Pokemon Corphish, and how Corphish has a Pokedex entry. Corphish! It has Pokedex entries that say that it came from afar, it came from overseas, and is able to adapt to pretty much any environment. This can be seen in its evolution, Crawdon, and something that's come up on the before, I think I learned this from True Green 7, is that Crawdon represents something that happens in nature called Batian mimicry. Because Hoenn's other big undersea predator is definitely Sharpedo, a Pokemon with a big jaw and a star on its head. And if you were seeing this Pokemon underwater with low visibility, you would be seeing a Crawdon with a big jaw and a star on its head. Oh, that in itself is a pretty cool theory, but what's that got to do with the Sinnoh region? Well, I've always wanted to know, what is the region that Corphish came from? If it came from afar, if it came from overseas, I've always wondered, could it have come from the Sinnoh region? And the reason I say that is because you can catch Corphish in the Sinnoh region, specifically in the lakes of Celestic Town. Celestic Town, the home of Cynthia's family, Cynthia being the trainer who uses the dragon-type Garchomp, a Pokemon that is also related, probably, to Sharpedo. Because Gible is the land shark Pokemon, both Sharpedo and Garchomp have the rough skin ability. They have the same shinies when you look at Garchomp's shiny form. I've kind of covered this before in general, but these Pokemon are probably related. So my thinking is, what if Corpfish's and Crawdon's Batian mimicry that's copying Sharpedo isn't actually copying Sharpedo? What if it's been copying Garchomp from the region where it originally came from Celestic Town? That's a fun idea. It's a cool way of merging two Pokemon theories. It's just a sort of a shame that there are no wild Gible, Gabite, or Garchomp in Celestic Town. They all exist in the, I guess it's in the Wayward Cave. They don't live in Celestic Town. There's only Cynthia, who used to live in Celestic Town, and she has her Garchomp as her ace Pokemon. I don't think all of the local Corphish went, ooh, look, Cynthia's Garchomp, that's cool, let's try and be that. Although Cynthia's Garchomp is really cool. I think if I saw Cynthia's Garchomp, I would want to be Cynthia's Garchomp. It is sadly just another Pokemon theory that doesn't quite have enough supporting it, and so hits the cutting room floor. You know what though, Pokemon Masters? This is actually, I think, a really fun way of using those ideas, because there are a bunch out there that I've thought about that have they've never quite materialized. I've never been able to make a video about them, and I think doing a little compilation of theories that don't quite make sense, actually, I really like the idea of doing that. So if you would like to see more of that, please let me know in the comments. Let me know by liking this video. Is this kind of thing something you'd want to see more of? Because I got a bunch, and not just about the Sinnoh region. I got them about the whole Pokemon world.
But today, Ron is over here helping me out debunking some of my own personal homemade Pokemon theories. Ron, please buddy, don't go too harsh on me.
I mean, if you deserve what's coming to you, I make no promises. But we did look at all your Pokemon theories, most of which seem to be correct. However, there were a few that are either totally wrong or require a new perspective. So we do encourage you guys in the comments to constantly hunt for more Pokemon theory evidence. It'll help Toby quite a bit.
Okay, in that case, let me start at the beginning with my baby, my gem, my diamond in the rough. Literally. My theory about the Crystal Onyx. Crystal Onyx, right? You all remember the Crystal Onyx from the anime, a crystallized structure that forms an Onyx that is different to regular Onyx? Of course you do, it's a massive mystery, and one of my first videos was a very successful Pokemon theory about this Pokemon that I now believe might be slightly wrong. All of this stems from Pokedex entries of Onyx and Steelix that talk about how it forms underground under intense heat and pressure.
Under pressure.
Thanks, True Green. In particular, Steelix's Pokedex entry talks about how it can be harder than Diamond. So, harder than Diamond? Nothing can be harder than Diamond, apart from Diamond. Oh wait, what if Onyx and Steelix are made of Diamond and that's what the Crystal Onyx is? Onyx only evolves via the metal coat, so it's a steel coating over Steelix and the rest of its interior
all diamond, all onyx look that way at birth, but they tunnel underground, they ingest minerals and become the regular onyx that we know. And we can even see this when Steelix Mega evolves, and you can see the crystal structure jettisoning out. So, go on, True Green, how might this one be wrong?
Okay, here we go. First, we kinda know that Onyx hatch out of the egg with rock skin right from the start, as we see in every game since Gen 2, and in fact it seems like the reality of this Pokemon is the opposite of what your theory proposes. Steelix's Pokedex entry states how it is said that if Onyx lives for over 100 years, its composition changes to become diamond-like as it evolves into Steelix. So in general, just like real diamonds, Onyx is some kind of stone that can, in rare circumstances, be pressurized and become a diamond. It seems like you may have misinterpreted this fact. When you saw Mega Steelix, you thought that was a callback, showing the crystal onyx that was underneath all along. But in fact, it makes more sense that the pressure of Mega evolving pressurizes the stone within Steelix, further creating a diamond structure which pops out of Steelix's shell. So the theory's a bit different now.
Speaking of giant crystals, here is another one that I was really proud of that just never came to fruition. See, in the Kalos region, in Anastar City, there is a giant sundial that has connections to Mega Evolution. This sundial is made of a giant pink crystal and has a gold ring in the middle. It is sat just on the edge of the Great Bay of the Kalos region. Only when you look at the Kalos region map, there is no Great Bay. There shouldn't be a giant body of water there, nothing more than a little lake. There certainly shouldn't be islands in the distance. When you talk about the town a little bit more, you find out that there is also something known as a moon dial that exists, and given that the next games coming out were Sun and Moon, and we had a sundial and a moon dial, I began to think about connections. Perhaps the pink crystal was made of Diance's crystal, or the gold ring one of Hooper's, that was allowing you to see through a wormhole, and on the other side of it, those islands were the Alola region. A perfect theory, I thought. Until now.
Well, obviously that hasn't come to fruition. We never got the moon dial, and in fact, Kalos doesn't seem to be particularly related to Alola, apart from some NPC texts here and there. But that's not really proof. However, here's the real deal. The hole on the sundial was made for light to shine through it. Plus, we see Hoopa rings in Oras, and they simply don't look the same. And according to your theory, the islands we see around Anastar are visible as a result of Hoopa's supposed rings, as if we're looking through the ring and seeing another place in the world. But you see the islands around Anastar even when you're not looking through the hole. The islands not matching up with anything on the Kalos map is probably just an inconsistency in the region's design.
While we don't have a better answer to this now as to why those islands are there in terms of game design, if maybe you have a theory, just let me know. I definitely think there is some kind of connection between Kalos and Alola, given Olympia and Ace Roller. This was something I speculated about before Sun and Moon came out, and again, nothing ever really materialized from it. I have a theory about it, which may be correct, but it isn't definitely wrong, like our next one. And this was when Sun and Moon came out, it provided us with a mystery character, Ryuki, who came from another region. And I believed Ryuki to be an older version of Benga from Pokemon Black and White 2. For one, they're both dragon enthusiasts, they have wild hair, they both have razor sharp teeth, and look at what Ryuki's wearing. He's dressed up in something that you might see in like the Pokestar Studios, which is right next to where Benga lives. On top of that, Benga is a word that means a style of music, in particular I think in Africa, an African style of music, and Ryuki is a musician.
Sorry man, this just seems like circumstantial evidence. One simple counterpoint could be the fact that since Sun and Moon take place shortly after the events of Black and White 2, there may not have been enough time for Benga to change that much in proportion and personality. Just because Benga is named after a music style doesn't mean that they're the same person. In Japan, he's named after the guava fruit, and his English name most probably came from a type of tree. And are you really using pointy teeth as evidence? Come on, Toby. Buddy, you're better than that. Plus, on top of those things, Ryuki has a role as a leader in Mali's Cantonian gym. He has connections to Alola and Kanto, but none of his backstory mentions his supposed Unovan roots? That seems unlikely, bro.
Okay, so the next theory I'm going to bring up is one that came out right back towards the start of the channel. It was a collaboration I did with M&J TV and Exelion. And we put a lot of work into this theory. We really loved it. See, we had just started learning about the Pokemon multiverse as a result of the Delta episode, and Hooper's portals were everywhere, and so we were thinking, multiple universes, Hooper, it can create wormholes. So that's kind of cool, and Hooper has this whole Pokedex entry talking about how it's stolen a castle from another dimension, or stolen the riches from castles from other dimensions, or other places rather. I jumped the gun a bit, and given that we didn't have Ultra Beast and we didn't have other dimensions properly, my thought was that Hooper had grabbed a Parfum Palace, that is a castle in Kalos, from our world, the human world. This is because the castle looks exactly like the Palace of Versailles in the real world, and inside there is this picture that is supposed to be AZ but just looks like an accurate depiction of Louis XIV from the real world. I was like, oh, Hooper has travelled to our world, stolen the Palace of Versailles, put it in Kalos, and it's called Parfum Palace. Again, we didn't have any other interdimensional Pokemon back then, apart from, say, Giratina, but that's not really its MO.
While I would have believed you at one point, there's literally no evidence in the game that Hoopa's rings have trans-dimensional powers. Basically, all it does is warp space within our own universe. It's a wormhole, just a shortcut within our dimension by making a hole through space. Plus, Gen 7 introduced Pokemon who do travel through dimensions and universes, since that's a super big deal and part of the plot. Why would a Pokemon from a previous generation be able to do what the Ultra Beasts, Lunala and Solgaleo, were designed to do? Hoopa's rings create wormholes, not ultra wormholes, which allow you to travel to different dimensions as well as space.
Yeah, given that we didn't have any other portal creating interdimensional Pokemon like the Ultra Beasts at that time, I just kind of jumped the gun and assumed that was one of Hoopa's powers. Speaking of the Pokemon world, I'm going to move on to Theory 5, and this is the last one, and it's a big one. It's one that I know a lot of you love, and honestly, it's one that I love and would love to continue working on, even though I know it might well be wrong. That is the placement of all of the regions in the Pokemon world. To create this map, I had to go into all of the Pokemon side games, the main game, stitch together little bits of information, stitching together everything and creating a Pokemon world map, kind of inspired by the Poke-Earth from Celebi, just using the in-lore information. However, in order to do this, I had to disregard bits of information, including any bits of info that talked about our world, the human world. This is because I believed that Pokemon was moving away from that, and yes, okay, it's mentioned China in the past and America in the past, but those were just like old school mistakes, and they weren't going to do that anymore. They weren't going to keep on referencing that stuff. Pokemon was going out of its way to solidly create its own identity and its own Pokemon planet.
But Toby, that's not entirely correct. As the series has continued even into Gen 7, the real world keeps on getting mentioned. For example, Raichu's Pokedex entry in Sun states that it has enough electricity to knock out an Indian elephant, so real world locations and even animals are being mentioned. I mean, every continent other than Africa, I believe, has been directly mentioned by Pokemon. In Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, Professor Oak tells the player that Pokemon from around the country can be brought to the Pal Park, and then continues to say, in other words, Kanto or Hoenn. So Kanto, Hoenn, Sinnoh, and Johto must be part of the same country, like the Pokemon World's version of Japan, which explains the term National Dex. It seems to us now that the most likely thing is that the Pokemon World is an alternate version of our own, with many of the same locations just adjusted in shape and size. So it's not an exact one-for-one, for those of you thinking that Galar is just an upside-down England. However, it probably sits in the same place as England on the Pokemon World map. And as for your point about Kalos, it seems like the region is only based on the top half of France, so perhaps since France has been mentioned within the franchise, Kalos is just a region within the north of the Pokemon World's version of France. But while that's also speculative, it's still way more probable than your previous theory.
Now, don't get me wrong, when it comes to Pokemon theories, it's sad to kind of think, oh no, those ones I definitely got wrong. But actually, as I was saying, I was going through with True Green and I was surprised. I expected it to be a lot easier to find 5 Pokemon theories that we were definitely 100% wrong on, and actually there is of course a whole playlist. If you're interested in Pokemon theories, I do have more coming out. I think I'm going to make one of the next 2 videos of Pokemon theory actually, that combines the worlds of Detective Pikachu with the games. The whole thing to do with Shadow Pokemon, don't worry about it. That said, right now, if you want to watch us debunk other Pokemon theories, we've done a whole video over on True Green's channel, so please click that link at the top of the description, and as always, soar high, Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master.